President Donald J. Trump called out Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts by name today, and I got to admit, I'm feeling at least a little bit potentially responsible for this, and praise God for that. Earlier this week, I did a segment regarding the judicial tyranny that we are experiencing here in the United States of America. Democrats, leftists, they're going out and they're shopping around for an activist judge who's willing to impose an injunction or a restraining order or whatever decision he or she can make to subvert, suppress, and possibly even stop the Trump agenda from being fulfilled. Now, granted, they are ignoring the will of the people, the vast majority of whom not only voted for President Trump, but also have demonstrated approval for everything that President Trump is trying to do. They might like some of it, they might like all of it, but very few people like none of it. Those that do are generally anti-American or just severe sufferers of Trump derangement syndrome. There's been a lot of calls, including by the president himself, to take certain actions. There have been conservatives and talking heads that have been saying, he just should ignore it. That's an option. Joe Biden, there is precedent for that. Joe Biden and Barack Obama both ignored judges during their time in the White House. They could engage in impeachment, and John Roberts actually called out President Trump for supporting the idea of impeaching these judges that are engaged in judicial activism. Well, I got a lot of heat for it, but I did post a segment of my show. Did very well on YouTube, extremely well on Rumble, and very well on Twitter as well as on my website to the article that I had posted about it. And I did notice at the time, the next day, there was quite a bit more traffic from Washington, D.C. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to take credit for it. This all falls on President Trump. But there I said there's really only two ways to truly stop this degree of judicial tyranny. The first way is practically impossible because it would require the legislature, Capitol Hill, to be able to limit the jurisdiction of federal judges. They would need to pass a law. And in order to do that, they would need at least 7 Democrats to get on board. And the chances of that are, nil. So then I went to option 2, which is for Chief Justice John Roberts to declare, he can very easily declare that either they stop what they're doing, they being the judges, or what's more likely that there would be an expedited scenario. Anytime a judge, a federal judge, a district judge, whatever, anytime they impose something on a president, and to be clear, I was saying to any president, any executive action in D.C. handled by a local, federal judge, court, district judge, whatever, any decision that they try to push off and to stop the executive branch, it gets immediately expedited directly to the Supreme Court. That John Roberts can do and almost certainly should do based upon what we're seeing. Keep in mind, President Trump has had more judges, more decisions against his executive orders. Just through February, we're not even talking about the first 3 weeks of March, just through February, so less than a month and a half into his presidency, he had more decisions against his executive orders than either Barack Obama or Joe Biden in their entire terms. And let's not forget, we were stuck with Barack Obama for 8 years. President Trump was able to pass him with the activist judiciary in a matter of a month and about a week, a little over a week. So that's where we stand. Now let's go to what has happened today. According to a post on TruthSocial, cross-posted over at X, the president said, unlawful nationwide injunctions by radical left judges could very well lead to the destruction of our country. And that's not hyperbole, by the way, to be clear. These people are lunatics who do not care even a little bit about the repercussions from their various, very dangerous and incorrect decisions and rulings. Lawyers endlessly search the United States for these judges and file lawsuits as quickly as they can find them. It is then the obligation of law-abiding agencies of government to have these quote-unquote orders overturned. The danger is unparalleled. These judges want to assume the powers of the presidency without having to attain 80 million votes. They want all of the advantages with none of the risks. Again, a president has to be allowed to act quickly and decisively about such matters as returning murderers, drug lords, rapists, and other type of criminals back to their homeland or to other locations that will allow our country to be safe. It is our goal to make America great again, and such a high aspiration can never be done if radical and highly partisan judges are allowed to stand in the way of justice. Stop nationwide injunctions now before it is too late. And here's the key point. If Justice Roberts and the United States Supreme Court do not fix this toxic and unprecedented situation immediately, our country is in very serious trouble. This is the first time that the president has called on the Supreme Court to act directly against the judiciary, at least during this term. And this is the path, folks. This is the only way. We're not going to get legislation passed that can bring these judges down, okay? Take them down to an appropriate notch. Maybe someday we can, but right now we can't. Then there's, of course, there's the whole, well, but we can impeach them. Folks, we need a supermajority in the Senate in order to actually remove them from office. So any impeachment, while it calls them out, it puts them, on notice. But again, unless I don't even know what a judge could do to properly get impeached. There's been like 14 of them in our history, and those are usually because of direct crimes, not because of any judgments that they have engaged in. And as John Roberts had noted, I don't completely disagree that impeachment isn't necessarily the way to go after judges who have not necessarily broken the law. I'm not agreeing with them. I wish that they could just be impeached. I would support that if it were possible. But the chances of getting, 13? We would need 14 Democrats to side with all of the Republican senators to get just one judge impeached. It's not going to happen. Okay? It just won't happen. Then, of course, there is the possibility, and I would say that this should be still left on the table, the possibility that the administration can get into a war with the judiciary, basically ignore any executive orders until they make it to the Supreme Court, and then abide by whatever the Supreme Court says. That's an option. It's not a very fun option. There's there's precedent for that happening, but not at the scale at which President Trump will have to do it. Because again, we're talking about more decisions, more rulings against his executive orders than either Barack Obama or Joe Biden during their entire terms. He's on pace to shatter everything. Even he had 65 of them in his first term in office. That was way more than anybody else, and he's on pace to absolutely obliterate that record if this activist judiciary is allowed to continue to impede the power of the President of the United States, the power of the executive branch. These are supposed to be co-equal branches. But this branch, this judicial branch, is engaging in judicial supremacy. Low level, there's dozens, hundreds of them that could stop a president. How is that even viably right? Now, to be clear, a lot of people have said, well, they should not be allowed to do that. Look, if a ruling is a ruling, okay, you can't really hamper the judiciary all the way because we will need them at some point. We still may need to sue a Democrat president at some point, or states need to be able to sue. What I'm suggesting is, if you're going to make the stakes this high at a national level, then it should be a national judiciary, such as the Supreme Court, that makes the decision very quickly. You can't have federal judges stalling an administration or even stopping them from being able to engage in their constitutional duty, their responsibility as the executive branch. So I am 100% on board with President Trump and his call to have John Roberts do something because, quite frankly, that's the only viable option we've got at this point. Open up the floodgates of your understanding of what's happening in the world around us. You can do this by subscribing to my very special newsletter. I only publish my most important work there, probably 2-3 times a week max. Go to jdrucker.substack.com, jdrucker.substack.com. It's free.